Hi, I'm Oscar, one half of the F1 couple, and today I'm here to talk to you guys all about Formula E, and more specifically, the first race weekend we had of the 2022 season, which was in Diriyah in Saudi Arabia last weekend. And boy, there was quite a lot of action to cover, wasn't there? As always, we come to expect with Formula E. So first of all, it had the new qualifying format, newly introduced for this year. Of course, the format we had over the last couple of seasons was a little bit unfair towards those at the head of the championship, and always led to these mixed up grids, which always made the racing super interesting. But you couldn't help but feel it sort of devalued it now, especially now that it's a world championship, as it was for the first time last season. And we want to have that bit of consistency where it's like more rewarding for the guys who actually are getting pole position, rather than as it was before, the people in Group 4 having the fastest track condition, so those who are lowest in the championship actually being able to qualify nearest the front. And I think, certainly this new format worked well. There was some teething problems, as you'd come to expect with anything, but I'll dive into a little bit more now. So we had the group formats, Group 1 and Group 2, for the first race, as there's nothing previous to go on. It was just each team had one driver put into each group. So that was the fairest way to do it. Then following the groups, there would be this knockout session where the fastest from Group 1 would go against the fourth fastest from Group 2, second fastest from Group 1 go against the third fastest from Group 2, and so on. And then they would go into, the winners of each of those would go into a semi-final, and then them into a final, which would set pole position. So Group 1 saw France, Bird and Van Dorn go through, with Roland as well, the fourth fastest. From Group 2, we saw De Vries, Cassidy, Dennis and Lotterer get through as well. Group 2 was a little bit messy, with Mortara crashed with about a minute left of the session, which meant no one could really put in a meaningful effort in the end. But I don't know how much of an impact that would have had anyway. People like Gunther, I think he was on a bit of an improving lap, but couldn't do anything about it. So as we went into then the quarterfinals of the sort of knockout part of the qualifying, we got three of the guys from the second group went through. So it was only Van Dorn from Group 1 going through, whereas we had Lotterer, we had Dennis and De Vries beating Roland, who had a very, very scruffy lap. So they were the ones who went through to the semi-finals. Then in the semi-finals, we had Dennis overcoming Lotterer. And in the battle between the two Mercedes, it was Van Dorn who came out on top this time. And then into the final, it was Van Dorn who again conquered over Jake Dennis and put himself on pole position. So that was Stoffel on pole, with Jake Dennis lining up just behind him in second, and the second Mercedes of Nick De Vries in third, and Lotterer in fourth. So I think overall the qualifying was good. Like I said before, I think just the things that could be improved is sort of the split perspective of it. Like for the pole position, they showed them side by side. So the car that was in front, which I think was Dennis, was on a bit of a delay. But they weren't quite in sync. So the gap between them, the shown on the graphic, didn't quite fit with what was actually being seen on the screen. But little thing, I think with the weeks that go by, these things will be ironed out. I think what I would prefer to see is actually just the live side-by-side split camera. I think that would be a better viewing, and then you wouldn't have to worry about any of the tech of trying to sync up the two side-by-sides of the two laps, which are going on at different times effectively. And I think that would still bring a just as good a viewing experience. So then as we move on to the race, Dennis didn't get a particularly good start, and he dropped behind De Vries and was even a bit under threat from Lotterer as well. But he didn't have quite as bad a start as Da Costa, who was stuck in this situation where it was just a bit like 4 into 1 doesn't go. I think he hadn't qualified particularly well. He was down the back with Ticktum and Giovinazzi, I think, as well. So yeah, not good for him. Out on lap 1. Then as we go into the first round of attack modes, it wasn't really any tangible change at the front. It didn't really affect proceedings. Everyone sort of carried on as they were, albeit sort of changing positions. But then as soon as the other person who got past takes their attack mode, then they fall back behind. Then there was this very messy situation between Roland and France, where Roland tried to get through and barged Freins out of the way, and then Freins didn't really like that and then tried to barge Roland back out of the way, sending Roland spinning towards the wall and causing a safety car. Freins got penalised for the bit that took Roland out, getting a drive-through penalty, but then Roland also got a 3-place grid drop for the Saturday race for the contact just before that. So all a bit of a mess between those two, and both of them getting penalised in the end, which is a bit odd to see. Maybe it would have been better off neither of them getting penalised and just being like, that's racing, but it wasn't really that fair, let's be honest. And then as the safety car came in, it was a bit of another strange situation where the field was just really spread out, like way more than you expected to be on a safety car restart. There was no real attacks straight away, as you would usually expect. No one really getting position, with sort of like the whole field strung out like a second sort of between pretty much everyone. And then we come to the second round of attack modes, which followed pretty soon. And Van Dorn made the big mistake, the sort of the thing you really can't do, and that's going for attack mode, losing all the time, but not properly going through the sensors, and then not getting that advantage, and also having that added disadvantage that you have to then go through attack mode again, and having to lose that time again. So, yeah, huge mistake from him, cost him the lead to his teammate, and he was, ultimately not able to go on and recover those positions and have to settle for second. Also, during the attack mode, it was Jake Dennis. He dropped behind Lotterer as well and had to have a bit of a ding-dong battle with him in order to eventually force his way back through. It wasn't exactly the quick thing. I had to have a few attempts using attack mode, not using attack mode, but it was clear to see that Lotterer was starting to struggle with his car as well. As you come to expect with Lotterer, it's never going to be the easiest pass you're going to be able to make, so there was a bit of contact involved, but whether that caused any actual damage to his car, whether it was just the having to use more energy to defend or getting offline and scrubbing those tyres, he then sort of seemed to cede loads of positions with Bird, Degrassi, Casti and Mortara all flying through in pretty quick succession, really. Something you wouldn't necessarily expect to happen if it was in ordinary circumstances, especially as Cassidy and Mortara got through into the final corner, which is a place I've never really seen overtaking before, I don't think, in the previous years. So clearly something not exactly going perfectly with this car. If it was overconsumption, or like I say, there's dirty tyres there, but yeah, not really working out for him and dropping out of the points. It did get pretty tight on energy at the end of the race, with Bird just about holding off Degrassi. I think he must have coasted the last few metres over the line. And Mortara, Degrassi's teammate, managing to get past Casti as well. And I've noticed Evans as well. Well, we weren't actually seeing it live, but he dropped a couple of positions on the last lap, down to 10th, which not exactly ideal, but this is always what we've come to expect from Formula E now. That just on the last lap, some people are going to have conserve their energy well, and some people are going to have not, and are going to have to do a lot of lifting on the last lap and pay the penalty for that, which is precisely what happened to Evans. So a Mercedes EQ 1-2 carrying on exactly where they left off at the end of the last season. Could we be in for another season of Mercedes domination? Something I wouldn't say domination we saw in Formula E last year, but we're quite used to seeing two Mercedes cars at the front, aren't we, over the last sort of 6 seasons in Formula 1. And I have to give a little shout out to Oliver Askew on his debut, finishing 9th. Very impressive. Often on debuts we don't necessarily see guys doing particularly well in this series. It takes a while to adapt to the cars. We saw that as well in this race with the other two rookies, Ticktum and Giovinazzi, being the last two cars across the line. So yeah, getting points on your debut, no mean feat by any stretch. So yeah, well done to Oliver Askew. So then as we move on to the Saturday race, again we have the qualifying in the morning, in the afternoon, I guess, as it's a night race. And we have De Vries, currently leading the championship, Degrassi, Roland and Lotterer, both getting through from Group 1. Then Mortara, Freins, Da Costa and Verne, the two DS Tachitas, getting through, but Van Dorn critically missing out on getting through to the knockout stage of qualifying. So then in the quarterfinals, we have De Vries beating Verne, and Freins obliterating Roland, really, and a similar thing happening as Mortara gets one over France. But the more controversial one was Degrassi against Da Costa, where something weird happened. I think what came out in the end was Da Costa had missed his slot to go out, so went out on the green light for Degrassi, and then Degrassi didn't get a green light. So Da Costa got his lap deleted, but it was the slowest anyway. Degrassi was the one who was then advanced to the semi-finals. So then in those semi-finals, De Vries, who was looking so quick all day, he beat Degrassi like comfortably. Degrassi looked absolutely fine, but De Vries just looked so at one with that car. And Mortara also beating France too. It was going to be De Vries against Mortara in the final, and what a final shootout for pole position it was, with De Vries looking absolutely comfortable, like about 3/10 up, I think it was, after the first sector only. And it was like, oh yeah, he's absolutely just going to storm to pole position now. This is going to be a huge gap. It's going to be like half a second or something. But no, then we saw the little graphic chipping away, his lead dropping, and a 5,000th of a second over the line, he managed to just hold on. Afterwards, you can see he wasn't particularly pleased with his lap, but yeah, certainly a great spectacle, and that really showed how this qualifying format can work so well, with the graphics showing that going away and building up that tension. Then as he crosses the line and gets the pole position by that tiny amount, yeah, it was a really thrilling thing to watch. So that meant that the championship leader, Nick De Vries, was going to be lining up on pole with Mortara behind him in second, and then France and Degrassi on the second row of the grid. So that's Mercedes with 2 poles out of 2 and looking very dominant. And then also in the semi-finals as well, the 2 Venturi cars using that Mercedes powertrain, just Mercedes looking like they've absolutely pulled one out of the bag here. Looking like quite a far ahead. This is meant to be their last season. I wonder now, with a car that's looking so dominant, whether they'll go back on that, and I saw talks that maybe they'll get McLaren to join in, make a super team using the 2. I think that's probably the way they're going to go. They'll be part of a team with supplying the powertrains to a team rather than having their own team maybe. But yeah, definitely I think with their form at the beginning of this season, it's going to be difficult to see them actually going through on leaving the championship. So then onto the race, and it was pretty much as you were off the line, with the guys at the front, no one really gaining or losing a load of positions. Sims made a bit of a lock-up and dropped a few positions back, and Roland made a good start, immediately making up 3 places and negating the effect of his grid penalty, which he had. So that was good for him. But other than that, not a huge amount of action in the opening couple of laps. Da Costa seemed to be struggling, which was quite strange to see. We were so used to that DS Tachita being so fast before last season, having won the championship 3 times in a row. But he was having not a fun time of it, with Verline, Van Dorn and Askew all getting past him inside 1 lap, which was, yeah, I mean, obviously less than ideal for him, but yeah, very strange. He seemed to get his pace back a little bit later on. The first round of attack modes went by with not really a great amount of change again at the front. Nothing really happened. Everyone was in their positions the same as they were before the attack mode and after the attack mode. But then we saw Verline make a very bold move on Askew, the sort of move, I think they said it in commentary, that you only really expect to be able to make that on a rookie. And I'm sure he'll learn over time. You have to defend a little bit better than that. And the blocking and a little bit of contact is mostly accepted in this championship, even if I don't necessarily like that all that much. But yeah, that allowed Da Costa to get through as well, dropping Askew a couple of places. Then came the second round of attack modes, and unlike the first, there were quite a bit of a mix-up with this one. Mercedes and De Vries seem to not make the right strategy call with it. It's always difficult to know what to do. I feel like when you're at the front, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't with the attack mode. If you go early and then you fall behind your rivals, you kind of get stuck there. And when they then take their attack modes, they can get back, they can blast back through. Or if you wait and take it later on, then you can just get passed on track by them and then have to drop even further behind. So it's a kind of a tough one. I feel like it's kind of exactly why it works, because those who are at the front are kind of worse off because of it. De Vries lost out to Mortara, Degrassi and De France as well, which not ideal for him. There was that great bit of fighting where Degrassi went through, and at the same time Mortara was attacking Freinz, and there was contact between all four of them at the same time. Really a great spectacle, and all just clean and hard racing. Well, cleanish, a little bit of contact, but nothing to worry about really. So after that, it was Mortara who led from his teammate Degrassi, with Freinz in third, and then De Vries dropping to fourth. Things then go from bad to even worse for De Vries, who has quite a large amount of contact from Verne as Verne goes for a move. I think, again, the stewards investigated it and found nothing wrong with it, I believe. And yeah, I sort of had the same opinion where it was hard racing. De Vries went off and tried to rejoin and sort of had contact with Verne, who could have given him a little bit more space. But, that's Formula E, you're going to have a little bit of tyre banging. That then made De Vries lose some momentum, and his fourth place soon turned into ninth. And yeah, really that just upset the rest of his race. Then with just 10 minutes left on the clock, Freinz made a bold move on Degrassi. Usually with Degrassi, he's again one of those ones who's very good at defending. I think afterwards, after the race, he said that he was on a different strategy, sort of he was conserving at that time, ready, saving up some energy to attack a bit later on. The move from Freinz actually looked a bit easy then to take second, but it was a position he would hold until the end of the race. He was able to hold that mainly because, 1 minute later or so, Sims had a big shunt, hit the wall, and crashed halfway through the sort of bobsleigh section, I think they call it, in the first sector. Naturally, this brought out the safety car, but this was a particularly messy safety car period. Really not what we want to see at all. We didn't see it live, but we sort of cut to all of the cars stationary with contact being made between them. I believe because the safety car had to hit the brakes because there was a tractor on going across the track, or parked on the track, or going across the track or something like that to go and recover the car. So yeah, that was very, very messy. And then we had the crane lifting Sims's car, the crane on the digger lifting Sims's car, and cars having to almost drive underneath it. And it just all seemed very slow and clunky trying to clear this one vehicle. I think afterwards he said it should have only taken 4 minutes, and it took a good 8-9 minutes to get this car cleared. It's kind of not really what you expect. What is way below the standard of what it should be at a race like this. And I feel like there's a combination of things. The facilities were probably not ideal in the first place, I would say. The way Sims had parked, it was next to one of the you see the orange boards that mark the marshal posts, where they should be able to recover it from there. They should have a crane there that can lift that car over the barrier. But clearly they didn't. Have to get a digger from a couple of corners before and dangerously drive around the track with it. Might sound a little harsh, but just a bit incompetent from everyone really. And I feel like the race director himself actually did a decent job. I feel like he could have called the safety car a little bit earlier just to slow the cars down and allow that tractor to get a bit of better space for it to move along the circuit. Remarkable parallels that could be drawn to the Formula One race in Abu Dhabi at the end of last year, how this race would end under safety car, even though the track was just about cleared for the last lap, but erring on the side of caution, which I believe is what is the absolute right thing to do, and just leaving the safety car out because if there's less than one sector to go and that tractor's only just got away, then it's too late really to call the safety car in. And that's exactly what Scott Elkin, the race director, did. I believe it was the right decision, even if it makes it a little bit of an anticlimax. Just the race director doing his job right, I guess. So that meant that the positions were exactly as they were when the safety car came out, with about 10 minutes to go as we went across the line. So it was a win for Mortara, with Freinz in second. I can imagine he was a little bit aggrieved because he looked like he had the pace to get through if there was going to be a one-lap shootout, but not to be. And the second Venturi of Degrassi in third. So a great day for the Venturi team to have two of their guys on the podium, and that's definitely putting them both in a great position for the championship, of course, as well as the team. So coming away from the first two races, both the championships are very Mercedes powertrain dominated, with Mortara leading the drivers from De Vries, with both Degrassi and Van Dorn also in the top 5. And of course, those two teams naturally leading the constructors as well. It's just Jake Dennis who managed to have a very good, consistent weekend, getting third in the first race and then fifth in the second race. He's sitting in third in the championship and looking very good. I believe he was quite unlucky at the end of last year to miss out on the championship overall. And especially after he had what I would call a very slow start to the season. When I watched the first few races of last season, I just thought, yeah, he's not going to do a lot. And as soon as he got his win, it just gave him so much confidence. And it's good to see he's carried that into this year as well. And hopefully he'll be able to challenge the Mercedes EQ and the Venturi teams as well throughout the year. And hopefully some other guys as well. We saw pace from one lap pace from the Porsches, but them not having particularly good race pace. The Cheetahs, similar thing. Vern managed to hold on quite well in the second race, so hopefully they'll be able to come along and challenge a bit more later on. And of course, other guys up and down the grid, how Formula E can be. One week you can be having a disastrous race and going round at the back, and the next week you can be an absolute hero up at the front. So yeah, I think that just about covers everything that went on in the weekend. Hectic and crazy as always, as we come to love with Formula E. And next time out we're in Mexico in a couple of weeks' time, I believe. A track that we've been to a few times now. Always seems to produce good racing, but then doesn't pretty much everywhere in Formula E. I hope you've enjoyed the first episode of this new series looking at Formula E. I hope you enjoyed the race. I hope you're looking forward to the next one in Mexico. So as always, I've been Oscar, and this has been the F1 Couple podcast. You can always, as always, follow us on social media at the F1 Couple on Instagram and Twitter. And we'll be back with our podcast in the next couple of weeks. I'm not entirely sure when we'll be bringing our first one out, F1 related. But yeah, we'll be bringing that sweet Formula E content as well now. Formula 2, Formula 3. If there's anything else you want me to cover, looking at this sport, looking into doing a little bit of explaining, looking into the drivers and their history, anything like that, then let me know down in the comments or send us a message on our Instagram or our Twitter, or tweet at us at the F1 Couple. And until next time, I'll see you later.